Welcome, I'm Glen Anderson, producer and host of this TV series, Glen's Parallax Perspectives. This series explores a wide variety of issues related to peace, social and economic justice, the environment, and nonviolent social change. We especially provide opportunities for the public to hear voices and viewpoints that are rarely heard in mainstream media. Mainstream media, politicians, and culture see the world in conventional ways. The establishment is stuck in how they see the world. In order to solve problems, we need to see things differently. This TV series, Glen's Parallax Perspectives, can help us see things differently so we can solve problems at all levels, from the local to the global. This series is called Glen's Parallax Perspectives. Here's what the word parallax means. Put one finger in front of your nose and another finger farther away. Close one eye, then open that eye and close the other. Your fingers will seem to move. This is called a parallax view. This TV series invites you to look at issues from fresh perspectives. Also, see much information about the issues that we cover in this TV series and previous episodes of this series at my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. And now I invite you to watch this month's program. This month's interview on Glen's Parallax Perspectives can help us heal our sharply divided nation. We conducted this interview 2 weeks after the 2020 election, and this TV program will continue to be a useful resource long after the January 21 inauguration day. And that's because our nation's polarization has actually existed for a very long time, not just the past 4 years. And the polarization will continue until we accomplish some very profound healing. While elections decide winners and losers for political office, election results do not change the minds of the people whose candidates lost. So the losing candidates' supporters do not go away. They and their thoughts and their feelings persist in our society, and they will resurface in many ways. Therefore, our society needs to practice understanding and healing. So regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, this TV interview will help you understand the problems and provide practical remedies so that our nation can heal and move ahead. The remedies include listening deeply to people with whom we disagree and practice understanding and compassion even while we disagree. This does not mean ignoring or giving up our own values or our own understanding of the issues, but we do need to help our nation have honest, open, and vibrant conversations about things that matter. We addressed this topic also in our November 2020 TV interview, and you can still watch that interview through my blog and or read the thorough summary that I typed up of what we said. You can visit www.parallaxperspectives.org. Parallax has one R and two L's in it, parallaxperspectives.org, and then click on the TV programs category to watch the video or read the thorough summary. Now, this 2020 December interview explores the subject in more ways and provides a number of practical solutions. And this interview, this program you're going to watch now, makes perfect sense even if you did not watch the November program. And also, I'm typing up a thorough summary of what we say during this month's interview, and the thorough summary will include links to more sources of information, and I will post these also to the TV programs part of my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. So we have two guests. You met them in the November program, and you'll enjoy meeting them again for this hour. To help us explore these things, I'm happy to welcome back Susan Partnow and Rachel Aaron Kalish.
They have long and deep experience helping people in many parts of the world resolve conflicts through the compassionate listening model. They work with the Compassionate Listening Project, www.compassionatelistening.org. And Susan and Rachel Aaron will share their exceptional knowledge and skills. They'll also be applying these to the serious polarization and finding various ways during the hour to share practical things that you can use in your own life. We are happy to have Rachel Aaron and Susan with us again. Welcome. Glad you're both here.
Thank you, Glenn.
So, if you did not see the November program, as I said, this will make perfect sense to you. If you did see it, this actually will not be redundant because we cover so much new territory. But I want to briefly summarize what we said in the November program so that anybody who missed it will be fully up to speed as we proceed through this interview. We discussed the need to observe what's going on and discuss it objectively with people whose ideas or beliefs might be different from our own. We discussed the need to accurately recognize other people's feelings and our own feelings, and other people's needs and values, as well as recognizing our own needs and values. And if we remain calm and show respect for people who differ from ourselves, we can create an atmosphere that allows honest conversation, that allows better understanding, and perhaps even find some common points of agreement. And even if we disagree, that's okay if we handle that disagreement well. We need to start within ourselves with deep grounding and awareness so that we'll be able to manage our own triggers without getting into an argument with somebody who has different ideas. And we need to respect the other person's right to hold ideas and beliefs that are different from our own. Then we'll be able to listen deeply and seek to truly understand the other person. When the other person feels respected as a human being, then we're able to move closer to respect each other and affirm the humanity of both of us. And we might be able to truly hear and understand our differences and perhaps move toward depolarizing. This is not about necessarily trying to change the other person's mind or any more than they might change our mind, but at least we can restore some civility to our society and help us move ahead as one nation. We discussed the need to avoid labeling, name calling, and so forth. We can disagree without being disagreeable. If it's kind of like what the old saying says, hate the sin but love the sinner. So we can respect the other person's full humanity and experience being truly with the other person at a deep level, even if we disagree about the facts or disagree about the issues. So that's kind of where we are up to the start of this interview here. Rachel Aaron, when we were preparing for the program, for this interview here, you said that you wanted to create an opening of the mind or a softening of the heart. And can you tell us what you had in mind by that approach?
Sure. And first of all, thank you for that beautiful summation. And it's so really nice to be back with you and your audience. Thank you for doing this, Glenn. Yeah, that if we have some capacity to just lean back a little bit, to soften a little bit from the, that fight, flight, or freeze that we're all hardwired for in our amygdala, which can really harden us. This is a way of kind of just being a little bit more spacious, a little bit more curious and open. So open-hearted, open-minded.
Thanks. Yeah. Let's see. Americans have become a lot more polarized, partly because we do not even hear or read the same information. Decades ago, when I was young, everybody watched the same 3 big TV networks and read the same newspapers. But now the political left and the political right have their own different sources of news, different sources of facts and information. And so the left and the right in this country have their own different sources of opinion, propaganda, and bias. And so it's kind of like we don't even speak the same language or have the same reality any longer. Because of this, people differ about what's real, what's true. And each end of the political spectrum is free to denounce as fake news anything that the people on the other end of the spectrum believe. And conspiracy theories are widely believed, and fewer people are trusting science. And there's even a growing number of people who believe the earth is flat. So in some ways, we're moving backward in this. Who could share some insights to help us understand what's going on and why the common understandings of reality have fractured in these ways?
Yeah, I can speak to that if you want.
Please.
You know, this has been an area of fascination for me because I think for a very long time, most of the news sources kind of took the truth out of the middle and they left out the partial truths and the distortions of the hard right and the hard left. And now what you've got is people taking those partial truths and blowing them up into a full truth because they're not getting the other perspective. So it's really complicated. And when we start to get into arguing about facts, it's just can go nowhere fast. I've been in very long engaged conversations with people both on Facebook and in person who just come from really different sources. So one of the things that's really useful is to be able to say, okay, let's get beyond the facts. We might not agree on the facts, but let's go into what we each value. And we can speak to that more.
Yeah, that's good, because all human beings have values of some kind or another. A lot of people might not be aware of them to articulate what those values are, but I know the both of you have ways of helping people kind of dig in within themselves and understand what it is that they value. So that in itself is kind of a healing and humanizing process. Rachel, Aaron, I want to follow up with you about one part of this. I know both you and I have watched this Netflix documentary film titled The Social Dilemma, and it expands upon some of these realities that we've talked about just now. Would you summarize the film's message that's relevant to this topic that we're discussing?
Sure, and this may be about to get a lot worse as we're starting to see, because there's starting to be a conglomeration around people who are not happy with this election getting onto sources that are completely disconnected from what many of us think is a different kind of reality. The Social Dilemma actually says that the algorithms on social media are designed to keep being reinforcing loops of what we already believe. So that somebody, for instance, in one part of the country who has a certain search history, and if you put climate change into your search box, will get all kinds of stuff about climate being an existential problem. In another part of the country with another search history, they will get that climate change is all a hoax. So that we're really not only living in separate realities by the sources we go to, but they're actually fed by these algorithms. And that that's actually really a lot of the issue. So which is way bigger than how to have a conversation with people. I mean, it's such a huge societal and global challenge right now.
Yeah. So for example, to build on what you said, if I happen to believe the earth is flat and I'm searching for websites that say the earth is flat, the systems, the algorithms within those high-tech computerized systems are going to feed me more links and prompts to learn more about why the earth is flat and why anybody who thinks the earth is round is full of baloney, and it'll just reinforce my flat earth obsession and not be able to allow me to understand people who think the earth is round.
Right.
So I get marginalized by my own search.
Yes. You get reinforced. It's a really reinforcing. And so it's very validating. And now you get to be with all these people who believe like you do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. when we,
confirmation bias.
yes, confirmation bias is the
exactly.
technical term for
Right.
people in psychology who talk about this, and this happens, I mean, this goes way back, this is not a recent invention. Confirmation bias has always existed, but
Human, yeah.
yeah, it's a part of being human, but we all need to understand how that happens and the tunnel vision that we get, right? One of the things that happens is if you talk with somebody different from us, I keep saying yes to what I believe, but I end up saying no to what somebody else believes, and somebody else says no to what I believe. And it's possible when somebody hears a no answer that they just stop and give up. But when we were preparing for the conversation for this interview here, both of you offered some insights and encouragements for how to get beyond an initial no and what the remedies might be. And I want to talk with each of you about this. Rachel, Aaron, you said that like
I
in
think
biology, go ahead.
no, sorry, Glenn, go ahead. I was just
Yeah,
going to bring Susan into this because she
yeah, you
speaks
mentioned
so
on the
well to
phone
the values.
that in biology, a cell has a permeable membrane, and you suggested that we explore permeability by saying things like, "Well, that's interesting. How did you develop that? How did you develop that idea?" And can you share that your positive approach? And then we'll ask Susan also.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, and we talk about this and we teach this all the time, is that, we don't have to say a hard no to somebody because that can just create defensiveness and shut down. But if we're kind of semi-permeable to say, oh, that's interesting, or wow, I saw it differently. How did you come to that belief? There's kind of a permeability in terms of you're able to connect with the person. And we're about trying to keep the bridge to connection intact, so that maybe or not we'll change each other's minds, and maybe we won't, but we don't have to rip the community apart. We don't have to fracture the relationships. And
Yeah.
Susan has a great way of talking about this, about the really getting to the deep values underneath that, that keep that those connections alive. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Susan, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think very important for these situations is to be aware of, well, what is your intention? And if it's that we want to have some connection, we want to build a bridge, what William Ury used to call build a golden bridge that the person would be willing to cross, then we can keep seeing that person's humanity with dignity and be willing and maybe even curious to learn more about them. So when we hear something that's really upsetting or we get a big no, we can be interested. Like, how interesting, I really want to understand more because it's so different. Like here I am on my side of the bridge and it looks so different. Tell me about yours. So if we can invite that and have that open-heartedness that Rachel Aaron was talking about, we can start to discover what's really underneath the deepest values.
Yeah.
And when we get to the deep, deep, and under even that, the deeper value, we find a place of connection because our values represent our yearning for wholeness and health and rightness in the world. And really, because I believe we're all interconnected, ultimately, we all need and want the same thing. So when we get deep enough, we start to find, oh, you want safety too. That's what I want. Oh, you want your family to feel secure. That's what I want. So we find that place to meet. And then we can say, oh, but you have a whole different idea of how to go about that. But we can at least feel that human connection and meet on that bridge.
Yeah, that's really important. And you mentioned William Ury. He's co-author of that wonderful book, Getting to Yes.
Yes.
It's a great resource. It's widely available.
Beautiful. He also talks
library.
About the third way. His book on the third way is really a lot about this. Yeah.
And actually building, which builds, like making the rest of us, the community, whether or not you're actually facilitating directly in a facilitation role of a conflict, you can always help to kind of quiet conflict. Oftentimes we see people amping it up, on the streets, like it's almost like the kids going, fight, fight, fight. There's a way to quiet that down, and we can all take on the role of the third way.
Yes.
Yeah. Susan, can you share an experience from almost 20 years ago. You were speaking to a big audience in Seattle very soon after the September 11, 2001 attacks. Tell us how you worked with somebody who was heckling you.
Yeah, it was a very emotional day. It was either the day after or 2 days after the 9/11, and I had helped organize this rally. And while I was speaking, and I was speaking, as you can imagine, from my heart of how we need to move towards the people who have done this to try to understand and learn, and why are we so separated, and what's the fear about. I was encouraging all of that kind of approach. And this gentleman in the audience was just irate and yelling nasty things and heckling. So I was able to manage without getting distracted by that or having an interrupt, but I made a choice afterwards that I really wanted to live these practices. So I sought him out. I went into the audience and I looked for him. And I said, "Hi, I noticed that what I was saying was really upsetting and offensive to you, and I wanted to understand more about it. Can you share with me?" So I really went with an open heart, an open mind, and curiosity. And he was very upset, and he was talking and emotional. And then he shared that for him, it wasn't theoretical or collective. It was very personal, because a beloved friend of his was in the tower and died. And that just cracked my heart. And I realized, oh, I could cry with him and feel the pain and share that. And we really had this deep connecting moment that we were both in deep grief and fear. And that we really met there. And that I could understand his led a lot to anger because of his personal feeling, and mine led to wanting to find a way to prevent this. And so we were looking at it in different ways. So I don't know that we came to have the same solutions, but we really felt each other's humanity.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So often we have this kind of an either or binary kind of thing. And one of the things I like about nonviolence, and that I include when I do conduct workshops on nonviolence, is instead of looking at just an either or, find ways to do a both and. And decades ago, quite a number of decades ago, the great feminist pacifist Barbara Deming came up with this concept that she called the two hands of nonviolence. So there's one hand that says, no, I will not allow that cruelty and injustice to occur. But the other hand makes kind of a welcoming, sweeping, inclusive gesture that join together to find a better alternative.
Beautiful.
So it's like the one hand says, no, we can't allow that cruelty and injustice to occur, but come, let's join together and find a better solution. Beautiful. And so two hands of nonviolence, I think, are part of what we can do and get past the binary polarization that we have.
Yeah,
also,
I think you've really named something and so important, and it requires a lot of maturity in a way, really. We have to be centered. We have to tolerate ambiguity. It's a little frustrating. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Our brain kind of goes wonky. We want to see things more simply, but it is so much more complex.
Right. And people that I work with and issues that I work on have both of those happening. I oppose war. I oppose racism. I oppose an economic system that causes poverty, stuff like that. But I also find ways to lift up positive alternatives that we need instead. And so for quite a number of decades, I've spent an hour a week downtown holding signs for peace and human rights and stuff. And then at a different occasion, different place downtown, an hour and a half doing that. And the signs that I hold, that I made and hold, lift up those alternatives. So my signs that I make are designed to support the positive alternative instead of just saying no to the problem. So instead of saying stop the war, my sign says choose peace. So it invites people to join with us in a positive alternative. And instead of saying stop racism, I made a sign that says all people are one human family. and I made a sign that
Beautiful.
says human rights are for everyone. So instead of doing something that a person driving by or walking by might feel is targeting them with blame
Mm.
because they're in a country that conducts wars, or they live in a society that where racism is so predominant, it's inviting them to choose a better alternative. And we get a wonderful response. People really like to be included and welcomed in to getting the solution. So we get great, lots of thumbs up and waves and peace signs and support from pedestrians and motorists with all kinds of vehicles, all kinds of demographics. It's just amazing. Uh, we can do our two hands of nonviolence and welcome people in, and that really helps. So
Glenn, that's a great example of what we started out talking about, open-minded, open-hearted, because what you say, I can feel that, part of the way we teach is to really anchor in our bodies and really feel grounded and open and present. I can feel that when you say choose peace, that just kind of is an opening,
yeah,
it just
right.
really relaxes us as opposed to stop this or don't do this. It's
Yeah,
just
and it really works.
opening.
We can
Yeah,
tell by the responses that we get from motorists and
I
pedestrians. It
bet,
really
I
makes sense.
bet.
All three of us here recognize that there are better solutions than merely defeating our enemies. All
Right.
three of us have to uh, work to reframe the conflict so we can heal the divisiveness and welcome people into a better future. And in about 20 minutes or so from now, we'll talk about what Rachel Aaron has referred to as polarity management. But first, I want to lay some groundwork uh, about basic ways of reframing conflicts so that
Yes.
we can end what has been called the era of grim demonization, and we can start to heal these divisions. Rachel Aaron, I wonder, could you, um, how would you like people to see our nation's current crisis and the possibility of a better future? How do you approach
Mm, such a great question. I guess I would like people to hear the grievances underneath all the anger. I would like people to hear the anguish and the fear underneath all the expressions of anger and blame. And I think if we just started there, that would be tremendous movement just to be able to understand each other. And I think some of that is happening. I mean, there's been a lot of interviews with people from different sectors of society, and it's starting to happen, but there's still this reflexive, you're different, you're against me. And I think that part of what I get, in my vision, that we would be able to scream, but not at each other. We'd be able to say, oh, this is so frustrating and I'm so upset, but we wouldn't be saying you're a jerk or you don't get it, or we wouldn't be attacking in any way. We would be just expressing what's true for us. And that's easy for other people to hear,
yeah,
right? When we really express that way,
yeah.
people can hear like, oh, you're hurt, you're upset. So that would be a place to start.
Oh,
It's
that's
not a
Yeah.
finishing place, but
I,
it's a
great
great,
starting point.
and
Susan, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that. I think that's so important. And then I would add an invitation to dream together, because I think we're feeling so defeated and afraid and negative right now. So what do we dream that's possible together?
yeah.
So if we invite someone to express theirs, we can find, oh, I dream that too. How can we build that together? What's
Yeah,
keeping us from that?
yeah, yeah.
And the challenge, and I love what you just said, Susan, I think the challenge is that unless we get to that deeper place, the dreams are going to be more superficial. So like somebody says, well, I dream of a country that's, that's all white Christian male dominated, or I dream of a country that, is multicultural. And those places look like they don't have a meeting ground. But if you go deeper, what are you really wanting? We're wanting safety, we're wanting health, we're wanting to feel good about ourselves and feel validated and feel like we're connected to the people around us. So I think if that dreaming has to come from a deep place, doesn't it? Like it
Mhm.
can't be a want. It has to be a really deep need, as
Yeah.
the NVC folks would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Susan, I want to check in with you. You and Rachel Aaron, have been conducting 4-part workshops for people who supported Biden and people who supported Trump. How have you designed those workshops? What do you do in those workshops?
Well, we've made the invitation and hopefully the safety and welcome to people of all perspectives. But honestly, we've mainly had people come who are more on the Biden side, but who have a lot of people in their life who are on the Trump side. So what we designed is a place to feel safe, to talk about the pain that this division and polarization is causing, and to build skills and mutual support and a practice field where you can try to experiment. So you can bring like, wow, I have this broken relationship now with my uncle, and what do I do? And we can help sort of rewire, replan, redo, reboot, building the skills and the support and the compassion and capacity to do that. So that's really what the workshop is about. And we also extend by the end of the session to dealing with social media, because it's a little different to communicate in that arena than face-to-face.
And I just want to tag on there, 2 of the women from our last class are actually getting together. They're intergenerational from across the country, but because they're on Zoom, they are going to be inviting Trump supporting women. They're very curious to sit down and listen to them. So out of that class, they decided that that was a project they wanted to take on. So
Yeah, that's an exciting thing, because we need to get the dynamics of this alternative way out there and about in our society, because so much of the pressure is further polarization, and the kind of work that the 2 of you are doing is a bold
really
alternative that we need. There's something I was going to share. I had it written up here in my notes, and I think I won't have time for that because we're a bit behind the schedule. But I want to just mention, and I'll have this typed up in my blog when I do a thorough summary of what we said during this TV interview. I'll include this typed out. It's a few paragraphs. But there's a book that has a powerful example about using compassion to reconcile somebody who was immersed in hatred and cruelty. The book's title is Not by the Sword, and it was something that happened a number of years ago in Lincoln, Nebraska, where the cantor of a local synagogue was getting hate phone calls from a guy, and threatening phone calls, and some black people in that town also were. And they found out that the guy that was doing this was the Grand Dragon of the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan in Nebraska, and the FBI was considering him to be armed and dangerous. And they found out, as they found out about this guy, it turned out he had some severe disabilities. He was stuck in a wheelchair and was angry about having the disabilities that kept him confined to a wheelchair. So he vented his anger by becoming an extreme racist, anti-Semitic person, and threatening people in various ways. And so what the cantor and his wife did is they realized this guy is hurting and he's limited because of his disabilities in the wheelchair. So they said, you need some help cleaning your apartment. You need some help buying groceries and stuff. And they offered, and he finally was able to accept some practical help. And they actually became friends. And he gave up his Ku Klux Klan membership and did speaking engagements on behalf of human rights. And he became more deeply interested in what was the ethic of this Jewish couple that reached out to him with compassion and understanding. And he developed an interest in understanding the spirituality of Judaism, later converted, and he moved in with them because his disabilities got worse. They invited him to move in with them. And it's quite a story. The book is just fascinating.
I love that book too, Glenn. It's beautiful.
It's amazing.
love, when we see each other in our full humanity and dignity and
Right.
care. Just,
Yeah. And so they did what you folks are saying, was get below the superficial level of the
Yeah.
polarization and recognize the human person underneath. And they connected with this level of empathy and compassion and reconciling stuff. And they came up with really good nonviolent alternatives.
They did. Almost all the people that leave hate groups are because of some compassionate outreach.
Yeah.
There are a number of them around the world, and they're almost always because somebody really took the time to connect. And it's,
So
we can't underestimate the power of that love, as you said.
so we need to learn these lessons of what actually works. And instead of saying we're doomed to endless polarization
mhm.
and escalation of conflict, figure out what has been working and how can we replicate those success stories.
Yeah. And can I just speak for, I know we're a little off time and I'm sorry, but
Go ahead.
I just want to just speak to this just a little bit because I want to just acknowledge how difficult it is. And if there's anybody in the audience sitting there thinking, oh, sure, like what planet are they from?
Oh,
You know, I want to really address that skepticism because we are hardwired for this tribalism. We are hardwired to fight each other. We're hardwired for the hatred that we're seeing. And we're also hardwired for something else. We're hardwired for God and goodness and connection and love. And part of that is cultivating the practices that allow us to live from those higher states. And it is work, as you said. It's not something that we can necessarily do just because we want to. And we have to overcome a lot of, you know, tendencies and fears and really develop a practice to be able to start to see through the, you know, what other people necessarily present that triggers us and makes us afraid and want to pull back. So it's work on all sides. I think of it as spiritual practice, and I think
It
we
really
both do.
does take deliberate intention because the our society has the skids greased toward this other stuff, and so this
right.
takes a choice.
But
Susan?
I wanted to add too that I just think this is so important, and we can't do it alone.
Right.
So it's a spiritual practice, but we need community. We're social animals.
Yeah.
So we need what some call the sangha, or the community, to come together to say, so you reassure each other, because it's very scary work.
Yeah.
When you hear so much pulling you to this other reality. So you need others saying, no, you're not crazy. This is important. This is good. You're doing well. We can do this. And then we can reaffirm and get through the fear and challenges and the automatic, you know, getting triggered when we have each other to hold on to.
Right.
It's such a good point. So much what the people in our classes are saying, that just the support of having a group of people that also want to do this when all their other forces are really echoing a lot of hate and polarization.
In recent decades, people in various parts of nonviolence movements have created affinity groups, small, close-knit groups of people that can provide some mutual support for doing bold things. And so this would be a good case for that. I want to invite you to introduce the role play that you've developed to illustrate some things. It demonstrates how practical your ideas are. I don't know, one of you can introduce the role play. It runs just 2 minutes or so, and then you can debrief it. So take it from here.
Do you want to intro it since it's your friend? Yeah.
Yeah, we thought we would just, because as Rachel Aaron was saying, it's not easy to do this. So we're going to just run a little sample conversation that could happen, that has happened, where first you get caught, because often we get caught off guard and we get into it, ramped up, but then you can make a choice to try to shift it. So we want to demonstrate how that can happen. And in this case, it's a simple situation of an ongoing relationship. So we'll say it's between me and a friend, where we share many ideas and are both progressives, but this friend tends to think that I am not awoke enough and I am too not getting at the real thing. So she she has a different so she gets reactive to things that I do, and then I get hooked. So that's what we're gonna.
And it's tied to what we're talking about, right? Because she thinks why, and I've had this too, like, why are you reaching out to those other people? Like, why are you wasting your time, kind of thing, right? So I'm going to get to play the friend who, so here's the setup. So Susan just posted something on Facebook this morning, and I'm the friend who's kind of arrogant and haughty and judgmental. And I saw her post, and she encouraged me to call her if I say something or post something that she doesn't like. So I'm going to pick up the phone and say, Susan, you asked me to call you, and okay, I am. I can't believe what you just posted this morning. You know, I really don't think you get it. I just don't think you get it. You don't know how serious this stuff is. Whoa. And you keep trying to bridge to these idiot people.
Let's just slow down a little. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that post that you just did about 10 minutes ago, and I decided, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone rather than just sit here and stew and steam and be mad at you. I think you're acting like kind of some new age baby boomer who like thinks it's all going to be, everything's going to be okay. And, and it's clearly like, you don't know these people. Like, I mean, they're not worth spending a minute on.
A little bit. Oh. Okay.
What? So you told me to call you and now you're ugh?
Well,
like, what's that about?
A moment. I need to take a breath. Is that okay?
I guess. Yeah. Okay. I guess I shouldn't have called.
Glad. I know. I'm really glad you called because I value our relationship and I want to stay in connection. But I realized I was just getting really ramped up. So that's why I'm glad we just took a little pause. So it sounds like you were really disturbed by what I posted.
I was really disturbed by what you posted. I think it's exactly what we've been talking about, where I just don't think you get it.
Mm-hmm. So you're afraid that by my encouraging these bridge building things that I am so drawn to, that it's going to dilute what you feel is so essential right now. Is that?
Yes, that's exactly it. That's it.
Yeah, well, I really hear you because I want those essential things too. I really do, deeply. I know how much we need that in our nation. And I guess for me, when I look at it, I just wonder, how are we going to get there? So I feel some of this bridge building work that I'm doing is one of the ways to help us get there. And I'm so grateful that you are there pushing at that other edge.
So could you just see what just happened? It just took all of the charge right out of me. Good job, Susan. Really. I couldn't even
job at ramping.
Nothing left to say. I know. I'm just completely deflated in a good way, but not because you're trying to manipulate to deflate me. It's because you really got it. You really saw me. Yeah.
When I could really feel, which I can't say on a given morning, if this friend calls me, that I would, be so prepared, because here I know it's my job. This is what I'm going to do. So, and I know how to do it, but do I do it all the time? That is the question. But it really came to making a choice and realizing I want to stay in connection, and I hear the truth in what she's saying, and it doesn't have to be right or wrong.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that. That's fun. Now the two of you have a lot of years of experience doing this kind of stuff. It's harder for those of us that don't have the experience. Mm-hmm. But I always believe that if people are grounded in the spirit of nonviolence and good intentions, we will say and do the right stuff.
Absolutely. It's interesting. The martial art of Aikido is the nonviolent part of it, and it really is physically that. It's moved towards the person and use the energy to help them on their way. Like, yes, this is important. So we can learn it.
Yeah. Right. And I just want to emphasize what a practice it is, to Susan's point, that none of us is perfect, and we don't have to be, somewhere between being absolutely perfectly centered and doing this perfect and being so abominable that we walk out of the room. somewhere in between, there's good enough.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to just encourage the listeners. And I know we do in our classes, like, just, you don't have to do this perfectly. Try, because people will feel your good intention.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. I think that's important. We're a bit tight on the time here, but
okay.
this has all been good stuff. And I wouldn't want to cut off any of this
Sip it.
that we've been able to share. But I want to move us into dealing with some of these big emotions that are afoot in the nation. Our nation's polarization has been involving a variety of very strong emotions that include anger, fear, despair, cynicism. And we've touched on a bit of this from time to time here during this conversation. But I wonder if we could get into some of these a bit further. Additional insights, Rachel, Aaron, about any of these strong emotions that are afoot nowadays, or we're
I think I
with
did think, I think I did speak to that a little bit before, about that really we need to listen. We also need to give people permission to express, but in ways that aren't attacking. And most people don't know. They think there's either suppression, and you either stuff your emotions, or you like throw up all over people. And there's something in between, which is like very alive and allowing, and you can do it in a way that doesn't hurt people. So you can say things like, I'm furious that Donald Trump lost the election. I'm really angry. And you don't have to like make that about a whole story about somebody stole it, right? So there's ways to feel all those feelings. And I think the most important thing, we came from a culture of repression for a very long time. And then the lid got ripped off, and now everybody's like just kind of, like flinging all this stuff. And I think on the other side of this is a way of managing our emotions by really owning them, working with them honestly, and not having them run us. They don't have to grab us at the level at which they currently are running the culture.
Yeah, and a lot of these have deep roots in our society and other societies. I mean, for a long time, women were not allowed to speak up about what's going on within them. If a Black person objects to something that's unjust, they get shut down a lot in our society. Historically, they're not allowed to be assertive of their rights and stuff. And there's a lot of this kind of stuff that's deep in our society.
That's right.
That makes it even harder for people to deal with emotions.
Which may be why this is an important stage, even though it's a very painful one. That it's really, this is a stage where people are refusing to be shut down, refusing to be shut up. And that's important. And then the next stage, as I think we talk about it, is that where we really learn to be able to speak our truth, but also to be able to hear and be with each other. And it's not an either or there either.
Yeah, and kids are speaking up now about the climate and about other things. That's really healthy. That's healthy. We need that.
Well, I think it's a time of great fear. And of course, a lot of it gets stirred up by the media, but there are deep reasons. I mean, climate change creates a lot of fear. Fires, Rachel Aaron was surrounded by them. Floods, it really does get at us. And I when I was doing some deep canvassing just before the election, what really struck me was when I was really listening in, what I was hearing was the fear underneath, the fear that created the intensity of the polarization. And being able to acknowledge that and move towards it and not try to suppress it and have some compassion and care for it, we can live with fear. We're strong and resilient as human beings. It's if we think we're not supposed to have fear, or we have no way to have it acknowledged, that I think it becomes more of a terrorist within us. When we can sit down with it and talk to it, then we can manage it.
And then it doesn't back up either. It doesn't back up into something that explodes later.
Right.
And those fears exist at various places along the spectrum. It's not just people on one end of the spectrum blaming other people for feeling fear or vice versa.
Yeah.
Fears are out and about, and we need to deal with them
Yeah, I think
honestly, openly,
Yes.
understand them.
the strategies are different, but the fear base is shared.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
are we going to survive? How are we going to manage?
yeah,
How are we going to make it through?
yeah. One of the things I think we mentioned in the November program that I think is fun to mention again is during the Vietnam War, people in a lot of nations were disagreeing with the United States war in
Mhm.
Vietnam. And there's a young American woman who was visiting France, and she sat in a public park in Paris and held a sign that says, "An American willing to listen." And people did indeed come up to her and tell her what they thought, which is a healthy kind of thing to do. And Rachel Aaron, you did this in 2003, shortly before the Iraq War started. That's a good kind of um, activity that creates a fresh opening for people to be able to express themselves.
We created a little group that used to go to the protests, and with just a sign that just said "willing to listen."
Yeah,
And we've had, different people. We've done this. It has had tents that are listening tents at different places, and anything that can help to really engage and diffuse. I think
yeah,
not to diffuse the activist energy. We want that, but we want to be able to do it in a way that's really effective
yeah,
and opening rather than closing, and just gets
Well,
more polarization, right?
creating a container for it. So it could be this pot right here, the purpose is, or like Edwin Rudge creates these empathy tents. And then, or at up on Capitol Hill when it was occupied last summer, there was a whole area of couches and they created conversation cafes with a
yeah,
structure. How do we come together? So
yeah,
we have a way, agreements that we're going to listen. We're here to dialogue. So people just need tools. There are simple structures and ways. Just taking, for example, if you're in having a big argument with your uncle about Trump, you could just say, here's my watch. We're going to each get 3 minutes without interruption.
uh-huh.
And then if you just each get to take that turn, it will transform. If you know during those 3 minutes, I'm going to truly listen. And now
Yeah,
it's your turn and you're going to listen. So just structure can
yeah.
really shift it.
Well, I know
Yes.
in some groups they'll have a talking stick.
Mhm.
So you have some little object. It could be a stick, it could be a tablespoon, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when it's your turn to speak, you have that, and the other people around the circle will be quiet while you're speaking, and then you hand the stick on to somebody else.
Yes.
So we can devise these kind of things, and these things are not new. Some of these are very old, ancient traditions from communities.
That's a Native American custom,
Right.
actually.
Yeah.
Almost every native peoples actually around
There,
the world. And
there,
it's
yeah.
part of Conversation Cafe, by the way, which is a great process
Yeah.
for these
Yeah.
kinds of conversations.
So that this would be fun to get more of those things happening with the kind of spirit that the two of you are talking about. Um, um, when a society is polarized, as we are now, people tend to choose sides. It's us versus them, uh, and it's this versus that, and it's whatever. But that kind of binary thinking prevents us from thinking creatively. We need to open things out. And you've talked about this at several points here about opening things out. And Rachel Aaron, you have talked about something called polarity management, and we haven't explored it yet in this conversation, but I know that's something that you're very good at. Tell us a bit about the concept of polarity management and how do you help people accomplish that?
Mm, Thank you for the question. Well, I love the model. It was created by Barry Johnson. And basically the theory is that there are polarities in life that are not ever going away. They're just embedded in life itself. There's in-breath and out-breath and night and day. And, you know, and that when we really get good at managing polarities, we do them in a way that honors the best of what each polarity is trying to say. So here would be an example, like there are conservative ways of thinking that are really positive, that are trying to conserve what's best. And then there are progressive ways that are trying to move things forward. And there's healthy aspects of both of those communities. And then when they harden, because they're not engaging healthily with each other, they can harden into polarization. But polarities that are managed well and worked with well can flow and can kind of, what he calls, sort of stay above the line of dropping into the toxic, less healthy aspects of that polarity. Is that too abstract, or does that make sense? Is that clear enough?
It gets us going. Yeah, we're okay. Really close to the end of the interview time, and there's some things that we could have talked about. We always over prepare for the programs. There's lots more things that my smart guests could talk about that we don't have time to get into. But I'll be typing up the notes as well as the things that we said during the interview, but the other additional things that you folks or I had in our notes that we could have explored. I'll type that up, and that'll be in the thorough summary that I'll post to my blog, along with the link so people can watch the video and share that with their friends. Please do invite your friends to connect with this. There are a lot of good sources of information. I'll include links at the end of the thorough summary that I'll type up and post to my blog. There's some information sources. Certainly your organization, the Compassionate Listening Project, is an excellent resource at a global level, not just within this country, because other countries have conflicts too. And but you can see a lot of stuff at my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. There will be a link to watch this December TV program and the November program, and the thorough summary I'll type up of what we said, plus additional things that we did not have time to say, plus links for books, videos, articles, nonprofit organizations, and so forth. Visit parallaxperspectives.org, click on the TV programs link or the nonviolence link. And I appreciate the Compassionate Listening Project and the work that both of you have been doing. The website there is compassionatelistening.org, and there are resources there and opportunities for trainings, including the trainings that you folks and others conduct, and opportunities to go to other places of the world and do this kind of work as well. So I hope people will connect. I want to thank Susan Partnow and Rachel Aaron Kalish for sharing their insights and their practical remedies with us. This is not just a head thing, an abstract theoretical thing, but there are real things that we can do in our daily lives. And that's what we wanted to convey here. And both guests have done just an excellent job of showing that these things are really practical. It's not just a theoretical thing. I also want to thank all the people who've been watching the interview here. I want to remind people that practicing good listening and compassion for people who are different from ourselves does not mean ignoring our own values. We do need to help our nation have open, honest, vibrant conversations about things that matter, but there are ways of doing it well, and that's what we need to be learning and developing and practicing. No, all three of us agree with what Van Jones said recently about the reunited states. Quotation here from Van Jones. He said, "The election may be over, but there is work still ahead of us. The reunited states shows us that if we are going to heal this country's divisions, we all need to summon the power to change how we see and hear each other." So that's a wise message. You can get information about a wide variety of issues related to peace, social justice, and nonviolence through my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org, or you can phone me at 4919093. We are all one human family. We all share one planet. We can create a better world, but we all have to work at it. And the world needs what you have to offer. Thanks.